Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make a quilt, and it's called Ring of Wreaths. Now the pattern is very Christmassy because it's done in red and greens, but I tried it out in blues. It doesn't look Christmassy at all. It just is a really nice quilt pattern that would look good in almost any color. So what we need is a jelly roll, some accent, and some background. Now the pattern comes with multiple sizes, but the size I'm going to make here on the table, that's the throw size. So you can pick almost any size here, but we're going to make the throw, and so we're going to need 20 strips. We're also going to need 1 3/4 yards of the background, 1/4 yard of the accent, and then we're going to need some border fabrics, but we'll worry about that once we get the patchwork done. Now this jelly roll, like most jelly rolls, it's got 40 strips in it. And we're only going to need 20 for our patchwork. So I'm going to pick out the darker ones, the ones that will have a good contrast against my background. So I'm just going to start pulling off the ones I'm going to use that I think will look good in the patchwork that are a little bit darker. Okay, these are the 20 that I'm going to use. And they're going to get subcut. Now, because it's not my pattern, I can't give you all the sizes I'm going to cut them to, but Cozy Quilt Designs patterns are really easy to follow. I've made a ton of them, so I'm just going to cut all the sizes that it says. All of the pieces are now cut out, but before we move on, I would like to talk about these pieces that we pulled aside from our jelly roll that are not used in the pattern. Now, a lot of times when I'm working with a pre-cut, I find that I am pulling off some of the pieces that are very close in color to the background that I'm using. Because there's not enough contrast to use them in the patchwork, they won't show up against the background. But that's sort of unfortunate because I like all these prints. I like all the prints in the jelly roll. That's why I bought it. So something I'm going to do on this project, and you can do it on almost any project, is sneak some of these prints in. As long as these pieces from your pre-cut have the same basic color value as your background, you can sneak them in and still have your blocks look really good. So here's a block that has just the plain background. And here's another block where I snuck in those lightly printed pieces. And it gives the block just a little more interest, but the pattern still really shows up nicely. Now I'm not going to use these ones here because I'm really introducing a whole new color into the pattern, and it might change the look of it too much. But in general, if you're using a pre-cut and it's going to need a background, you're probably going to be picking a background that matches or is one of the colors in here. So feel free to take some of the pieces that are the same as your background and cut them and sub them in as your background. Our first step is to take the dark squares and mark a diagonal line across the back. So sometimes I will use a chalk pencil. Sometimes I will use a pencil. It depends what is going to show up on the back here. So I prefer to use just a regular pencil if I can. I'm just going to draw a light line. And that does show up. If I've got a really dark one, the chalk might work better. So I'm just going to try out what works the best. It doesn't have to be very dark. We just need to see it so we can stitch. I'm heading to the machine now, and I've got my accent and background squares. And then I've got the variety of dark prints along with the background squares, and they're all going to get stitched up the same way. So take one background and one of the accents, right sides together, and let's get this over under the needle here, and I'm going to stitch on the line, but slightly to that side of the line. And that way, when we open this up, all the edges should meet. So that's how you can tell if you did it correctly. If you open it up and all these raw edges meet, you've got it sewn correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with the rest of these and the rest of these. Now all we have to do is iron these open. So I'm just going to open this so all of the fabric is over on the light side there. Press it, and then I'm going to cut off the back 2 layers. And we've got a nice half square triangle there. Now we need to take these accent square half square triangles, and we need to mark a line on them on the diagonal going the other way here. So you have to be kind of careful because you've got that seam allowance in there. Kind of skip that part. And mark the back of all of these like that. These little squares, along with one of these bigger squares, this is what's going to make the little pinwheel that goes in the middle of the block. And it's a very cool method. I've never seen this before. We're going to now stitch right along that drawn line, and let me show you what it looks like then. When we open this up, we're going to get little teeny patchwork there. So I'm going to go ahead and make all of these squares, iron them open, and trim off the back. Now I have the shorter background rectangles and a few more of these printed squares, and we need to stitch a printed square onto one end, and you're going to have to look at the pattern to make sure that you get the placement of that line correct. You don't want it turned the wrong way. You want it turned this way on these shorter ones, and I'm going to again stitch right on that line. This is also going to get folded over, ironed, and trimmed. Now we need the bigger background rectangles, some of these squares that have the lines, and some of the half square triangles that have the accent and the background. Now all of the rectangles are going to get one of these squares on this side. And again, you're going to have to check the pattern so you make sure you get this with the line going the correct way. But they're all going to get a square on this side. We're going to open it up and iron it. Let me go ahead and finish these all up. Now we need to put something on the other end of all of these. Some of them are going to get one of these half square triangles, and I've got the line drawn on it, and I'm going to sew it like that. Some of them are going to get just the accent fabric, again stitched that direction. So check the pattern, it'll tell you how many you need of each kind. Now we're ready to make some strip sets with all of these guys. So we're going to need some different amounts here, and I'm just going to pull these off. These are half of a jelly roll strip now, which is very easy to use when we're making strip sets. So we're going to make a strip set that just has 2. So let me fold that in half. Then we're going to make one that has 3 different strips. And I'll probably put that dark in the middle. The order doesn't matter much. That one's going to have 3. Then we need one that has 4 strips. Let's use those 4. Again, I try not to get real picky about what's going where. Then we need to make a strip set that has 3 of these strips. And I think I will not use these 2 together because they're very similar. So let's get these 2 and a lighter one. And then we're going to add one of these background strips. So I'm going to keep creating all the strip set units that I need and get them all folded up here. So what we've got is 5 different strip sets here, and I've got that once here and once here. And their pattern will tell you exactly how many strips, how many backgrounds go in each strip set. So you can follow that so you don't get confused. So I'm just going to take them one at a time over to the sewing machine and stitch them up. Now the order doesn't matter on these. It doesn't matter which one goes on the right and which one goes on the left. It's just a blend of blues. Now anytime you're sewing strip sets, you want to put them right sides together, and you want to make sure you don't stretch them when you sew. So if you want to put a pin at the beginning and a pin at the end, you can. If you just want to line them up and hold them, that works pretty well for me. But do whatever works best for you so you don't stretch either strip. Now just use a careful 1/4 inch seam all the way down the edge. Now I like to finger press the seam. We're going to press the seam to the side, and so I'm going to pull it open and then draw my fingernail or even the pad of my finger right down here, and this makes it really easy to iron it and get it nice and straight. Now when you come to a strip set with a background piece, it still doesn't matter what order these are in, but the background piece is just going to go on one side. Seams are still going to get pressed all to one side, so I'm going to continue on with all the rest of the strip sets. So once those are all stitched up, you do want to iron these a little bit. Even though we finger pressed, you're going to want to take your iron and just give it a little bit of flattening out and then a little steam. So now I've got one of each of the different strip units that we need, and I like to cut them all at the same time. So I'm going to take one and I'm going to line it up on a line on my cutting board. Then I'm going to take another one and I'm going to move it up an inch. So I'm going to move it, I'm going to line this up with that inch and this inch line over here, smooth it out. And the reason I'm moving it up an inch or so each time is so that I can stagger the seam allowances. The seam allowances are not ending up on top of themselves because that makes it really thick. So I'm going to just keep moving this up an inch, or you can move it up 3 inches. It doesn't matter as long as you get it on a straight line and stagger it a little bit. You can cut them all at the same time. Of course you can cut them one at a time if you like. I just find that this goes a lot faster. Now I'm going to take my ruler. So I'm going to straighten it up so I'm on a line here. I'm going to use my weight to help hold the far end there. And I can cut through all of these at the same time. There's not really very many layers at any one time because they're staggered. Now I can move this over, put the weight on it again, and continue to do all my subcutting, and I will get them cut in bulk. Now at this point we've got all the parts and pieces we need to make the blocks for the quilt. Now the quilt essentially only has one block. There's just a slight difference in a few of them. So most of the blocks are made with this piece on the outside, but a few of them, the center blocks, are just going to have this piece that's a little different. But we'll show you that when we get to it. So I've got all of the pieces laid out. You'll definitely need to use the pattern so you know what goes where. And now we're going to start by sewing these two pieces together. Now I'm just going to finger press these seams. I'm not going to iron them right now. And the pattern does tell you which way to press them. And that's very helpful because now we're going to put this back where it came from and we're going to stitch this part. But the seam allowances are now going in different directions, and that makes it really easy to get everything lined up and to get your intersections to match. Again, I'm just going to finger press. I'm going to press over to the right, put this back where it came from, and now we can add this piece to the bottom. Now, we just need to add this little guy here, and then everything will be the same length, and we can stitch all of the rows together. Now we'll just simply add this row and then keep adding rows to the right and finger pressing to the right till we have this whole section done. So this is the block that the whole quilt is made from. Every block has this part. Here is where this block goes. So this is the block, except it's missing that piece there. And this same one, it's right here. It's just turned a different way. Right here, it's just turned a different way. And the only difference in these blocks is we are going to add this piece to some of them. It's just the two triangles. But then in the middle here, if we turn this around here, we're going to be adding this piece, which has that special edge. And that's because when we put all these blocks together, the ones with the special edge there, they're going to make a little pinwheel. There's one in the middle, there's one here, and that makes a nice little added design feature. And the reason we don't have that on the outside is because if it was here, we'd only get a partial pinwheel and it wouldn't look very good. So it's really nice to just have them sprinkled throughout the quilt. I went ahead and stitched the quilt up. I've got 3 borders on it. And now we are ready to pick some thread so we can get this quilted. So any of these blue colors will work. Now if we go with these darker blue ones, they're really going to show on the background. Even this, which is kind of a medium blue, is going to show. Here's a nice option. It's kind of an oatmeal color, not going to show on the background, and it's really going to blend in very well in the blue area. Now let's see what this light blue looks like. If we get enough of it, it's just going to show a little bit on the background. Let me move these other guys now. There. And it's not going to show at all in there. So I really think I'm going to try this light blue. For the quilting pattern, I'm going to use one called Florence. It's kind of scrolly, no real flowers in it, but it's curved nicely, and I think this will look good on that patchwork. I've got the ring of wreaths all done. Really happy with how it turned out. I just love those little teeny pinwheels. They're small, but they give it such a nice pop. The quilting, it's very subtle, but you can see it just a little bit here. And I really like how I was able to fit these light background strips. They're almost the same color as the background, but they don't fight with it at all. But it allowed me to use a few more of the jelly roll strips, and I just think it adds just a little bit more interest. On the back side, I used a coordinating print. It's upside down, there it's right side up. Very beautiful. The whole quilt is very flowery, very soft, very relaxing looking, and a lot of fun to make. Now before I made the quilt, I wasn't sure what color I wanted to do, so I tried another color. This is the pinky red version of the same prints, the same Andover laundry basket prints that I used in the blue. And this is another size that's included in the pattern. So this is 44 by 44 inches, very nice wall hanging or table topper size. And then of course the blue one, this one turned out 68 by 68. And there's a couple other sizes included in the pattern too. So it was really fun to make the two different colors. Thanks for watching our tutorial today. We hope you enjoyed it. Now before we're done, we're going to have a giveaway. You may have seen me make this in a video. It's called Roundabout, and this is a very cheerful, bright version of it. Here, let me pick it up. You might be able to see it a little bit better. So it's got stars and squares. It was made with layer cakes, all batiks from Robert Kaufman, nice and bright, and it's really easy to enter the giveaway. All you have to do is click the link below and put in your email address and your name. And remember, we can send this to a winner anywhere in the world, so good luck. Now, if you like our videos and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!